Napeahi hearings?
because you could have heard the variety of testimonies. And what is very important in any kind of hearing like this is you have to address the issue at hand.
Auntie, yeah, mommy don't go to my hand. Take that.
What?
You just take it.
Aw, so sweet.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. They
That
learn.
is so sweet.
They
Right?
They are
Yeah.
precious.
They know what we're doing. They watch us all day
Yeah.
discuss issues. They watch us go around over here try to make money so that we can
Mm-hmm.
do
That's
this.
it.
Where the money going?
Right?
Going to help with issues.
It's
I love
that
it.
is that I have a lot of respect for that kind of attitude. It's nice to see from that age.
Right?
Yes.
It is so nice to see. Yeah, I'm afraid we're gonna lose this whole fucking generation.
Well, we're starting to pull them in now.
There you go.
And they get to see our people interested, dialoguing, talking about our rights. They listen to us doing that all day long. In between prepping, cooking.
Yeah.
And that's so great. I'm stimulated when I come here. Um, you guys jar a lot of stuff. I have just this reservoir of information that it's. I mean, I have so much of it that
Oh yeah.
you have to go knock on the door and remind me of something, and then it will all start falling out. Otherwise, I forget I even had it. You know. But I got one of these Hawaiian minds. I don't forget shit. I mean, it's just like I was amazed. The day before we went to the hearing, I was at Uncle's house, and we were talking, and I was going, yeah, my background on Mauna Kea goes way, way back. In fact, I can tell you the first house over there is Pula'a, and then get Pula'a, Pumaili, Kimoli, Kalumakani, Kanakale Nui. Those are all the hunter cabins going around the mountain.
Uh-huh.
That's about 9,000 foot level. And I know them because we built them all. We planted all the trees. Yeah, I wasn't very much of a fan of this when I was young, because I used to get the fucking shit beat out of me every fucking day,
What's this again?
which is why I have such a colorful background. But
You wanted to know about my coffee? Oh no, that's.
No. No, is this wait.
You were asking me. I think it might be in
No,
there.
this is your copy from Uncle
That's
Hank's.
napeahi case, yeah.
Yeah.
I think she put it in there.
It's
Oh
on.
yeah, I already got that.
Done.
Okay.
I already made a copy of it, so we have a copy
so
of it in the
the
file.
Napiha'i case
Yeah.
will be very instrumental with stuff
Because
Teresa and them are
we'll be
doing.
using it more.
Right.
Okay, one of the things way at the end there, if I'm not mistaken, and we can verify that very quickly, is this part of the decision. In fact, where it talks about this could be very instrumental for all the cases. It talks about um, the state abandoning fiduciary responsibilities.
Well, isn't that what we were pitching the whole day at BLNR, Uncle?
Yeah, but honey, you have to understand that they don't care what you have to say.
So how are we gonna tie this in for a contested case? Oh
Well,
no, go ahead. They don't care. I can even
no,
tell.
and they don't care, and because they don't care, you have to be even more clever. You have to understand that look, just because you have an issue does not mean that you're granted a contested case.
So you don't
Um,
think they're gonna find merit? Well, we'll
well,
start
I don't
there.
know what the merit is. Because first of all, Suarez is not a Hawaiian, so he has less stuff. It depends if he makes the the condition or makes an argument that he is one who is personally affected right now, because see the problem is it's Galimba land that he's leasing, right? And so there's a conflict there. But secondly, he's not Hawaiian. Um,
But it's still public trust water. That's what he's saying.
and that's where he can stand. That's what I'm trying to say. Where do you stand? And that's why I wanted to just vet a little bit
Yes.
of this, because I don't want you guys to spend all this energy and time and money
No, we've narrowed
and
it.
not hit a point.
We've narrowed it down. Now even Kyle knows that. This
Good.
is what Kyle told me.
Okay.
Terry, they're making it about the 2.5 inch pipe that the Galimbas are tapping into that water resource. I know that. That's what he found out that day.
That is exactly
Okay.
what,
Now,
that's what that's what
but
Ida
he's
was trying to
saying
tell you.
he's saying it's just about the 2.5 inch, pipe. I mean that they're wanting to go and access. So what he is saying, Terry, it is public trust water. Anyway, that should be what he's suggesting is that there should be a manifold that goes to everybody else.
Yes, and
Now,
his testimony was well
what?
done.
Yeah, and that's what he's trying to say. Now, that's where it includes all of us as
Okay,
Hawaiians.
so the issue at hand for the Hilia case was whether or not they can cross public lands. It was not about the water. That's why Hyla kept on saying this is something that belongs for the water resource people.
Right? I
That's
heard
why I'm
that.
saying they compartmentalize things so they can't so they can avoid looking at a large picture. It is our job to make it one big picture,
Right.
Yes,
and
exactly.
everything from the hunting to the fishing
Exactly.
to the mountain, and I try to stress to the other guys who fought for. I was in the contested case for Keck,
Uh-huh.
huh?
Okay, go ahead.
But I was actually thrown under the bus by my own, severely thrown under the bus. But
Well,
that's beside the point. That's a condition I have to live with.
okay.
But that's when I went to jail, and that's why I wasn't able to go to grandma's funeral.
Well, Uncle, this is what I'm saying. Now, we're going to have to point one. There are several points that we've already talked about all day and
Okay,
all day yesterday.
help me.
Like
You
I
guys
said,
summarize real quickly. What
how
are
it
some of the
shows
things?
harm with what they're doing is harming uh, basically the native people of the land and what's been going on. That's been one point that we've been talking about.
Wait.
Um,
Clarify that.
um,
And
how
don't
it's
mind me. I'm
no,
going to be
no worries, no worries.
the devil's
With
advocate here.
how it's going to harm, how does it harm us? I think of how does it harm us as Hawaiians with this going on. We were going back and forth trying to look at the realistic points of that how it harms us, and with the river being dry, and with there being no life in it and no water flowing down, it harms us all because it's a part of our church, our livelihood, our culture.
Very good. Very good. Very good. Okay.
And the fact that, number one, I mean, there's several points. That was one. It does, where they're getting the water from is an existing flume, right? Am I correct?
It's an existing flume,
It's an
one of
existing,
several.
one of
It's all
several,
coming from behind Macanao,
right? And
which all connects to
they're
Hialeah
just
and all those.
tapping into an existing flume that altered the natural flow of the river.
Yes.
Okay? Now, the Ahupua'a tenants still reside there.
Some.
You have the Hanoas, you have the Kalinas, and you have the Apiki that still live in that area. Pali is one.
Okay, just really quickly off the top of my head, one of the things, and I apologize that I had to go run and try to get food for Michael, but I had the last word on that, and I missed the thing.
That's okay.
And
So,
but the last word was very important because this is something that you can use in this contested case, and that's because of they'll have all kinds of justification, but because they had the public meeting with very little. All they had is this stupid fucking thing, this little thing,
yeah,
right? That was all that was available to the public. That wasn't even enough for those who came.
there wasn't
Um,
anything available for our public.
and there was nothing, well, only that was.
Okay.
But you came late, so you probably didn't get a chance to get it.
Well, actually, I did. I got the
The,
submittals,
right.
but they didn't have their submittal in what I had. So, but
Yeah,
if
and
I
this
had
this is something that we need to watch because part of the reasoning why, when I first got there, I called right off the bat that this meeting was not convened the proper way. Okay, now on the record, it has me and Abel
I see it. I see it.
disrupting things, and there was a fight. That was an hour and a half into this freaking charade.
Well, the other point that we're bringing up is the fact that this is what I talked to Jim about this, and he supports the idea of a contested case. In fact, he invited me to go and try to see if I could go and go to what Bill. It didn't work out for whatever reason.
Bill who?
Smith,
Bill
Bill
Smith is
Smith,
who?
He's a
is
paralegal.
is a
Paralegal.
paralegal.
Okay.
Well, the idea of why we're doing this is to challenge what I've been wanting to challenge for the longest time for Ka'u, and that's the cultural assessment and how it impacts our people. How it's impacting our people. Now, one, nature conservancy. I'm trying to find out, or trying to challenge the idea that nature conservancy seems to be that person partnershiping with our government for the distribution of water.
It's very much so. They
Okay,
are international.
now why do they have the right to tell our Hawaiians when and where this water flow goes? And the other point is that, and this is what I've been trying to ask Bill Isla, who on your commission has the right to talk
Sam
about
Gong
our
thing, yeah.
traditions?
And you pointed that out that
And that's important because that is where we're gonna now. You gotta. What I find in the report for the environmental assessment for the Ka'u litigation suit that we're doing is that Nature Conservancy, Ed Olson, and all the same people that are tapping into the water source
the Little
also
Boys Club.
is putting up reasons for putting a bird, a alala bird, to preserve, help preserve. Their whole ploy is to help preserve watershed. Now, Nature Conservancy has a big play in the decision making for that. Sam Gan is Nature Conservancy.
Yes.
It's a huge conflict of interest.
He's asked, in fact, when you asked that question, um, one of the replies that Bill Ila said that he has a conflict of interest. He didn't bring up the Nature Conservancy, but he brought up Transcontinental.
What was that?
Transcontinental. It's another multi-million dollar multinational corporation.
No, no. He specifically said he worked for Nature Conservancy.
Well, I don't know how I
That's
got
the
it then
reason why
because
he walked out.
Well, he was talking about Bill Isla. You're talking about Sam Gunn.
no, it was in relationship
Oh,
to
okay.
It's.
her
I
her
asked him why
question.
did he leave, and
Yeah.
he says because he worked for who? It was Nature Conservancy.
Well, I heard Transcontinental.
Hmm.
Okay, and it doesn't matter
You
because
gotta you gotta watch the video because he said he worked for. Now, who is Transcontinental?
Transcontinental is a multifaceted land grabbing
Okay.
multinational corporate
He said he left. If you heard Transcontinental, I heard Nature Conservancy, right? Either or, he left, but he
because
was
there was a
supposed to
conflict.
be.
Because there was a conflict.
But in our previous testimonies with Bill Isla, I have questioned him about the qualifications they have on the commission for talking about my religion. Okay, and he said that they had someone in place, and that was Sam Gan. Now there was 8 of us Native Hawaiians pitching a Native rights issue, and we weren't being represented.
Excuse me. Aloha mai.
In fact, not taking into consideration the fact that they're not qualified to do so. They haven't been qualified to do so for all these years. Then why? Because they have people or they don't have people. Now that day on tape, when
I
I asked
remember.
him,
I remember.
who do you have sitting here? And he said, there is no one, and that's why you need to vote for the legislative bill that they're going to be putting and proposing. So, in other words, he told me right there was no one qualified enough to make these decisions.
And this is this is a very important realization because um, one of the things that I do too is I have all 6 volumes of the federal Indian laws, which tell you how they treated the Native Americans and what they have coming your direction. Okay, this is okay. Anyway, I don't know if you've seen what was going on yesterday at the White House, but they had the Native American groups coming up, all complaining because like 800,000 Native Americans are now being denied medical assistance and food stamps. This is the same thing. Remember I told you, you really want to see in a nutshell what they have in mind for you, go look at that, or read the book called "Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee." Because it lays out the whole stream of
Well,
things.
look at this. Why do you think we need subsistence gathering resources?
Precisely.
Because they can pull this kind of freaking power by saying, I take this away from you,
Right.
Hawaiian people. And then they're all going in a frenzy because they were dependent on the fucking government.
That's why. That's why I was saying, the whole thing. One of the things at the White House yesterday was Native American conglomeration approaching. They, they do this every year, but they're coming up and they're all talking about what has happened as a result of the sequestering, because it all fell into the sequestering, and because they don't have separate things, which is why I keep telling Hawaiians, you want to be second or third class citizens, tell me now because that's what they
That's
want you to
exactly
do.
what the
Right.
Native Americans are going through right
That's
now.
that's exactly what they're going through.
That's exactly what you're putting yourself into.
That's why I had to. That's why I said with Kupuna, if you get 15 minutes out of a 5 hour day, you are fucking good.
Oh, God.
And so I had to ask them point blank because they were talking about Kauinoa and all these things. And
With the issue that I have been pushing the Isla about, the fact that they're not qualified to talk for my religion, how can I put that and connect it to Native American?
okay, so um, let's go back a little bit. There are several things that you need to put in as far as being able to hold a standing. Okay, so first we have to go back to um, what is ceded lands, because the question is only about crossing. The question at hand is taking that pipe. The reason why the state's involved or DLNR is involved in it at all is because it crosses. It's
Public
not
land.
about the water. It's about it that pipe crossing
Public
ceded
land.
lands.
Oh, seated
Ceded
land.
lands.
See, and that's what we were talking
Okay.
about earlier.
Now this is
That's what
very
I was
important.
talking about earlier.
Okay, this is very important. Okay, so where you find this at, this is under the 5F clause of the Admissions Act. Okay, now I can even show you how to challenge that part, but let's go step by step because
Yeah.
that's up in the pipe. That's coming down. Um, under the 5F clause, and let me give you a little bit of history of that, just so we can put it in perspective. You know, I don't know if you remember, we're supposed to be the 49th state. Do you remember that?
No.
You're
Yeah.
too young.
I actually remember my grandparents talking about that.
Okay, we were supposed to be the 49th state, and I say this because I remember as a youngster we had the 49th state record label. Remember? We had we had newspapers already published. We had flags. We had everything that was in circulation when
Oh, boy.
Canada, I mean Alaska and Hawaii were up for statehood.
Huh. Is it, what year is that? In the 70s? 60s?
59. No, no, I'm sorry. Um, yeah, it would be 59 because that's when Hawaii got statehood.
Yeah, I wasn't born.
I was only 10 years old.
Yeah.
I wasn't born yet.
But I can remember
I was
actually
4.
following the election between
I was
Kennedy
4.
and Nixon
Mm-hmm.
at that young age. Somehow or another, I was in tune to that. But anyway, okay, so going back. Okay, so under the, well, let me tie this in. The reason why we didn't become the 49th state, the primary reason we did not is because of the 5F clause of the Admissions Act. They had all these other clauses in there. They had Section 5, but 5F was the key thing. The 5F lands was the transfer of the fiduciary responsibilities from the federal government to the state for the Hawaiian Trust lands. This is very important to understand
It's on
because
ceded lands.
it is ceded land. But
You
what
have
is
a
ceded
chance.
lands? What does ceded mean?
You gotta explain that to me. Is it
Ceded,
gonna be down?
ceded means a transfer. You cede something. Okay? It's a transfer on paper.
So who
Okay?
ceded it to American government?
The Republic of Hawaii ceded the Hawaiian Kingdom lands, which is in their documentation as stolen property from the Hawaiian Kingdom without compensation. That's why under Public Law 103-150, which is the Apology Bill, they make it clear the Hawaiians never relinquish their inherent sovereignty or their national lands.
Okay.
Then this is very important because it all comes into what they call a taking. This is a legal term. A taking land without compensation. This is a major, big thing.
You say a taking?
A taking. Okay, so that's a legal term that you might want to do. I mean, you guys are going to go into a real fucking hard crash course. But in this process, you'll be able to pick up a whole lot of stuff real quick. Um, so anyway, so the land in question that they're crossing is Hawaiian Kingdom land that the state is only the trustee for.
Okay.
Okay, they are
Okay.
not the owners, and this is one of the misnomers that needs to be clarified. That the state is not the owner of the ceded lands trust. They are by law the trustee, which is very important distinguishment to make because they're holding in trust your land that was stolen from your government and from your monarchy.
Yes.
Okay, and what we have left is just fragments of the Maheli, which is the public lands. Okay, under the ceded lands, under the 5 clause of the Admissions Act, there are 5 distinguished recipients for the beneficiaries. 4 of them have to do with the general public and education. The 5th one has to do, actually Hawaiians were named first, but the courts like to break it down themselves. That's how we get the 20% per rata share of the Seed Lands Trust because it's 1/5 of the revenues generated off the seed lands. Okay, and so, um, and this is something that I put in my testimony. I don't know if you picked up the significance of it when I talked about the 5 clause of the Admissions Act and the Seed Lands Trust, and that I was a Hawaiian that was not a beneficiary under the Hawaiian Homestead Commission because the Hawaiian Homestead Commission is actually in this in the Admissions Act. So it's distinguished from the Hawaiians as defined as a beneficiary of the Cedar Lands Trust. Okay, they're
Okay.
named because it was a 1920 thing.
Right.
The whole thing was to pass the obligate fiduciary responsibilities, which still lie with Congress and the United States, but they passed that onto the state of Hawaii as a condition for acceptance into the union. So that brought the 5F clause into the Admissions Act. That's the thing that stopped us from becoming the 49th state. Nobody knows this, nobody pays attention to it. I happen to know it, and because
Right.
I remember this shit. I don't know how.
Well, good thing you do.
It's actually a very important feature that I'm
Yes.
talking about. It's a very powerful feature because this is where you separate yourself from the general public. And here's what I told Bill Ida, and I said it in both the Gilead case and in the Mauna Kea case, that that I am a beneficiary, or I am a supposed beneficiary of the Cedar Lands Trust under the 5F clause of the Admissions Act.
Okay.
I am a Hawaiian, but not the Hawaiian that's identified in the Admissions Act to be related to the Hawaiian homes. I am the Hawaiian that is described in the 5 beneficiaries of the Cedar Lands Trust. And that I am not only that Hawaiian, but I'm also those 4 other categories, Joe Public.
Yes, I remember you saying that.
Okay? This is a very important feature because now you have one fingernail above the general public.
Right.
That's where you make your separation. This is where you can get standing. Now, they may not agree with you, but it's punching these things in. That's why I put the napeahi case in the Hilea one because it has to do with a taking and a
Their fiduciary responsibility for the taking.
their fiduciary
So
responsibility.
can we use Kanak's case for our standing?
I sure think you should.
God, we have
Makes
tomorrow. We can
sense.
fax it in tomorrow, but
Yeah.
we
Wait,
need to
now,
get it
now,
in
if you
there.
told me, if you mentioned right, I don't know the conditions. If you said it was 10 days, then you have until next week, Wednesday, I
Monday,
believe.
Monday.
No,
Monday.
no, it's 10 working days.
I thought they said
The
10 calendar.
calendar days it says on
No,
top,
no,
so I was
no, no,
wondering.
no. It's 10
No,
working days.
in fact, they told me it was Monday.
And if they say so, then you should meet that thing,
We meet it so that we don't,
so you don't default.
I'm in
But
But there is a clause in there that, in this application, that we can submit this and then send our supporting documents
Exactly.
afterwards.
It's
no,
the
no, that's what
adjusting
he told
boxes,
us.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what the conservation
uh,
guy recommended.
Yeah.
Send this in, send your application in with $100, and then you send a hard copy. No, he said you can fax it today.
You can send the hard copy.
Send the hard copy with $100 or the waiver. Now the waiver
Right.
goes straight to Bill Isla, and he's got to figure out that you have hardship. But at this point,
You have
Bill
hardship.
Isla,
Well,
Right.
but
at this,
you're not the
yeah,
one that's contested.
I'm not
Although,
the no, I can be.
well,
Why?
you can be, but and
See,
this is a
and that's why we got to make it to where I can be.
well, this is something that didn't occur to me until I did my testimony for Mauna Kea, and because Kalani Flores had a attorney with him from the Native Hawaiian Legal Corporation.
Who was he?
He
Oh,
was that
this.
howly guy with the beard.
Uh-huh.
He's very new on the block.
Okay.
I've never seen him before. And the reason why this is important because the Napeahi versus Wilson case was fought and won by Alan Murakami, Native Hawaiian Legal Corporation. Okay, and the more we understand this and the more we can play this, this is where we can start challenging OHA
Exactly.
because OHA's fiduciary responsibility under their guise, which I don't agree with in the first place. I was actually outside on the road protesting against the formation of OHA.
Well, I called Oha. I called Jerome, and he says that I need to speak. I said, I'm just informing you. I'm just asking you about this contested case. This is what I want to do. And he says, Terry, I know that what's happening to all our people outside is really evil. He says, but you got to go through to have the support of OHA. I have to go through the public policy, and the best person to see is Jocelyn. I know who Jocelyn is. She, Jocelyn is, her baby is water rights, water issues. So it needs to go through public policy for them to know whether they're supporting this issue or not. And he suggested we go and call Jocelyn. Now Jocelyn is in Hawaii, but to continue leaving a message so she can call. But I only wanted Jerome's idea as to what we're doing, and then put it in his ear what's going on. He brought up the Waihone case, same issue, plantation.
It is a very similar issue. But
Now,
this is something I'm going to use also in my submission that I haven't even started to draft yet because I'm just collecting information. But I was going to use this and I was going to bring this to your attention, the Napeahi case.
okay,
And the reason why this is so important, you have to understand law. Um, the state, there's a difference between uh, winning a case and a published case. Okay. I don't know if you know the difference
no, I don't.
there. Okay. Just because you win a case does not mean it's going to be published. If it is not published, you cannot bring it in a court of law as a reference.
How do I?
Okay? The state, when it is in their favor, they publish it. Okay? Which means the state can bring that case into the courtroom and say, we have a precedent here, da 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 da. Excuse me.
We gotta find my grandma Abby's case.
But I think it was a state court.
So
Maybe a state
we're in
court.
where?
Napiai case is a federal case.
Oh, no,
Napiai versus Wilson is a
Connect.
federal case.
I mean connect.
Yeah, connects case. Which makes a big difference because one of the things that the state is so afraid of is the feds are going to come in. And so we have to play
With the
this
feds.
with the idea that, look, if
No.
you can't handle your shit, I'll bring in the feds.
Hmm.
Because that's the only protection we have, as little
So you're
protection as that is.
recommending we use connect next
Well,
connect.
I think you need to review it. Um, and I have to catch you on this one. Don't mind me. I'm not trying to
No.
be a jackass, but when I sent it to you, you said you kind of skimmed it.
Yeah.
Now I know that you couldn't have because
Why? It
it
didn't
doesn't
open?
open up right.
No, it does.
No,
It
you
opens
try.
mine. I did open it.
With
Really?
that one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we found it online.
Well, I sent you the link. The reason I was saying is because I've gone into it several times and then
No,
it'll
I
flash the
skimmed it.
case and then I'll go back to LexisNexis, which is
Okay, go ahead.
the legal thing. Anyway, and so um, and because I've read so much stuff, It's very hard to remember exactly where these things are, but I believe the thing here has to do with the state abandoning their fiduciary responsibilities for the
Where?
ceded lands trust. And again, the napeahi case had to do with submerged lands. What is submerged, how it becomes submerged, and how it becomes part of the ceded lands trust. And so the case was argued um, that the state abandoned their fiduciary responsibility by indicating to the developer that they had no interest in that tidal pool that Kanak was fighting about, the Opaiula funds. Now, I say that because when you talk about Opaiula, that's what goes in the underwater cart system, that runoff. This is the start of the entire food chain. The little baby shrimp,
Yeah.
that is the start. That was what Kanak's case was about. Was about the fishermen's rights and the Opaiula.
Well, doesn't the water that goes down from Hinea goes down to Kawa, Honolulu, and that area, that one river that Pali was trying to clear, and he said he claimed that Ahupua a tenant. He said he's a tenant from up Mauka to the sea. That's the same water system that's coming down.
He's
You're
making
being
duck calls.
let
I'm
down.
pretty sure it's her. Yes. Now,
Okay, talk to me.
it was not referred to as the Public Land Trust. They changed the name from Ceded Lands Trust to the Public Lands Trust because it has 5 recipients. The way OHA gets its 20% pro rata share of the Ceded Lands Trust is because they are 1/5 of the 5 beneficiaries. Okay, but that is a whole misnomer too, because I even talked to them when Polly and I were down there. I go, by the way, where's your 20% pro rata share? They're like, what? I said, court says that you get 20% pro rata share. Where is it? And I'm asking you that because every year you go to the legislature and beg for your life, you know. And if I'm not mistaken, you have a portfolio of about $500 million, which has not served the people. And if you don't understand my way of thinking, is that it's the same fucking pocket. You know, you're just the left side of the pocket of the state pants. And so when oil gets taken out, which they're going to get taken out the next Constitutional Convention, oil is going to go out. They're going to try to, um, well, next legislature, they're even going to try to knock out contested cases. Um, but oil is going to go out, and so will Article 12, Section 7. And so we need to move now while we still have those features available. Um, I could tell you 10 years down the line things that are coming, but that's irrelative to right now. And it's very important to look at right now. And so while you're making this argument, and the argument that you're making is a very valid argument, you need to incorporate it into the exact language of what they are telling you. It's about a 5-inch pipe crossing, or 2-inch pipe crossing ceded lands. Like Bill Ida said, this sounds like a water issue. When he was talking about the muffler and all these things, he mentioned that several times during the hearing. And what he's trying to do is convince you that there's a department or a compartment for that. That is not this one. And therefore, since it is not within his purview, he's not going to address those.
Okay.
And that's what he's trying to do. And they're saying, well, that's under the purview of the water department and the water management thing. He even asked the rest of the board, doesn't this sound like a water management issue? The mufflering and equal distribution of water throughout Kau.
Okay.
Okay? And so the issue at hand is the 2-inch pipe crossing ceded lands. Now, so So when you contest this, you have to mention those conditions first of all. The very one that is in front of their face, the 2-inch pipe. Crossing ceded lands, no matter how short or how long, it is still ceded lands of which you are a beneficiary of. Okay? That's the other 4 parts. But you are also, Joe Public, but you are also, gives
Okay,
you
that's
just
the leg up.
barely a fingernail.
That's all we need?
That's all you need.
to go to pot.
That's why I'm bringing this up to you, because if you're not addressing it right off the bat, if you're not addressing it in a
They're gonna
manner
shut
that
it
it's being
down.
said, they'll just say they're going to deny it, and you can spin your wheels and get mad, and the remedy for that is to go into circuit court. And while that process is going on, this is the same thing that's going on with Mauna Kea. They're contesting the 30 millimeter scope. It's been they lost the contested case. They've lost the first round in circuit court. They're going for an appeal now. Um, they might even lose the next one down the line. I could actually tell you how. Um, and one of these things is very relevant, is what you had said, and it's a very important thing to revive and bring back into the conversation, is your religious rights. Because here's one of the secrets that lie in our conception. Okay? There is nobody who's over 200 years old who can tell me what those religious rights were. Okay? The reason I have a small fingernail of an edge is I was one of the last people to ever be trained by a recognized kahuna, which is Sam. So I had that small edge. Even even Gong, even Michael Lee can say he got training from this, but those people were not necessarily recognized as a kahuna. Sam Lona was recognized federally as a kahuna. Okay, that's a very important feature. Okay, and I know he was. I've read his cases. That was also in the Ninth Circuit. Um, his area known as Iolika'a or Haiku Valley, it's known as Iolika'a or Ialata. But there's several heiaus in the area, and I've seen him actually remove the entire
Very
water department
impressive.
out of there. Even the gauges, he got moved off his land, and they couldn't touch him. They could not touch him. We used to go ram through the fucking gates constantly. You know, Haiku Valley's got that
Mm-hmm.
fucking. But because he won access rights because of the waterway, he again, because of the waterway, and he proved that he was on the register of somebody who went there at least once a year, he was able to get his property.
Wow.
I was looking to see if the Nepe Mexicans tribe. Go ahead, Uncle.
No, and anytime you want me to stop, just tell me, because
No, keep going.
okay, I'm just trying to feed out as much
No,
information
and I like
as I
how
can.
you stated that we need to make sure that we state the exact things,
It's so important because that's how they throw everybody out.
right? Because if you don't,
Yeah,
you're just going to say, okay, you didn't follow the guidelines,
that
and then
that's
just throw
what
it out right
that's
away,
what Bill Ida,
right?
and Bill Ida, a lot of people think he's a fucking asshole and all this kind of stuff. But one thing I can tell you from his history, he was one of those who fought for Makua Valley, while at the same time he was working for the state harbors and took care of Pokai Bay. So he had to walk a very fine line on both sides because he was challenging Makua Valley in the bombing up in Makua. You're familiar with that.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
And
My
so
mother fought
Bill
him.
Isla, like I said, he was the director of harbors
So,
for Pokai Bay.
oh, go ahead.
Okay,
Go ahead.
these things tie in very heavily because
Very much so.
one of the things, and Michael Lee had told me, he says, you watch when I go up to testify, they're going to start complaining right off the bat, and which they did. But Michael also time qualifying himself, and Bill Isla actually mentioned, he said, Michael, nobody's challenging your standing or your who you are, and so all your certificates are actually irrelevant to your testimony. And Michael, of course, took offense to that, and so he was almost like, well, here, I'm just throwing it all in the box because it has to be there, which is absolutely true. If you throw it in the box, they have to deal with what's in the box. And now, this is a very important factor to remember. You can only appeal that which is. This is how, like I told you, I spent 9.5 years in a courtroom. That which is on the record, which
On the
is
record.
on the
Versus
record,
in,
not
not
stuff
somebody
that was
writing
just
notes
submitted in.
and that
Yeah,
put it in there. But if it's on the copy that's everybody gets to see, that's
yeah.
stating that
If it's
it's
part of the
written in through
transcript,
notes, you can.
and I'm a little bit troubled by what I seen there, and I didn't pick it up. I thought that black lady in the corner was a transcriber. She was not.
Tony Verbal.
And so this is a part that needs to be challenged, and why I am looking to see us develop allies.
Well,
I had mentioned make this mention
I met.
before
I talked to Keone Choi.
because if you go and review the sunshine laws, just because one of the first things I did when I came back to Hawaii was work with
So,
Ian, what's his name, with Common Cause Hawaii, which caused the sunshine laws to be enacted.
well, can we challenge that too as a point that they didn't
Well,
take into
I
consideration the
think it's a very
testimonies?
valid point. It and again, um, they are handling this in the way that benefits the state, and they're they're very much leaning in that favor. That's why Nature Conservancy. If you look at all those who were consulted, not one of them was the Hawaiian public. Okay, very important because you are 1/5 of that recipients. Okay, Nature Conservancy is only uh, part of the public, and only a small part of the public because they're a private institute.
They
Even
are
though
a
they're
private
nonprofit,
institute.
it's a private
They're
institute,
partnership with,
and they're multinational.
yes,
They do this
everywhere.
internationally, and some very, very bad things they're doing.
Yes, so challenging Nature Conservancy.
Well, not necessarily challenging Nature Conservancy. What
Mm,
we need to do is, well, my suggestion
mm,
is that we should look at the process and challenge the process.
okay.
Because
That's what you're gonna find in the test
here's
results.
one of the, and this may be, it may be these little steps, all of our little steps that's going to look at the door. Okay, and that is, this is the same reason why and I apologize for not being there when the door opened up again for the rest of the afternoon. I had run across because Michael was really, literally falling down in his chair. So he has to eat continuously, but it has to be continuous. But he was literally just about ready to fall over. And the person I had sent out to get some food had not returned fast enough. And so I got information that Kabuki restaurant across the street at my old self. But when I got back in, that's when Bill Ida says, he goes like this, say. And part of my last say, which is something that you might want to include in your contested case, is that the part of the reason why you believe that there should be standing is because even in the submittals, in the reports of Michael King, who was the guy standing hand and damn near holding fucking Galimba's hand, uh, who was talking about how this meeting went.
Manfredi.
Huh?
Manfredi.
No?
Was it?
Anyway, I may be wrong. The name is almost irrelevant to me. Um, but this is something that has been going on for probably the last 2 or 3 years, where the state is making pretense that information is being recorded. Now, the important part of this is that if there is no recording, if there is nothing that is on the record, then I can't appeal it, said by who.
Yeah.
And this is fundamental to your due process of law. It's a point that you might want to raise because one of the things I was going to say at the last part was the submittal by Michael saying that there was not only a fight, but Abel and Hank Fergustom disrupted the meeting. Remember? It actually says that in his stuff. And what I wanted to say is I wanted to disperse that misinformation because that is not what happened. I was there way before Abel showed up. You know what I mean? And I brought up that condition right off the bat. And it was because there is no public record of the hearing. There is no testimonies. There is no recording of who said what to whom where. And thereby um, denying you testimonies that may be or could be and should be important to your exercise of your due process in court by not having a record of who said what where on the public record that you can now use to bring and challenge in an appeal. Because you can only appeal what's on the record, not what's in it.
Yeah.
And so what they have been doing, and they've been getting away with this, is they've been doing, I didn't realize it then, otherwise I would have called it right off the bat. Where's the recording of this hearing? Now, the reason I said that is because normally when the University of Hawaii comes in, and I'm actually surprised that it didn't happen, they bring their own court reporter.
Mm.
Transcribes exactly what is being said by the University of Hawaii. That was not the case.
So what was that girl doing?
Um, she may have been doing a recording, but a recording is not the same thing as a Transcription. I know because I used to run all the court reporters in the state.
They know, and
But the thing is, you don't know how it became unanimous.
Right.
You don't know what they used as their tools for processing.
exactly.
And the 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 fact that they're taking Michael Caine or whoever the fuck the guy was, word for his stuff, without even having so much as a fucking scratch pad or a board. I challenge them with even the board. I've even challenged the federal government on this
So, go
because
ahead.
you cannot appeal that which is not on the record because the whole court has to see the record in order to see if you have a place of contention.
So that's why it's good to challenge the
The
process,
process is so
because the
very important.
process is what one individual.
Okay, so yes, you got the principle right.
Yes.
So here's another part of this thing that you can add in because this actually challenges the process and challenges the correctness of their decision. And that is that Auntie Guyver, you probably know her, Honua, from Paneava, has the Pala Illinois for those water rights,
Oh,
for the Hilea and Makanao water rights. She is a Honua, that's the land,
Hanoa or
Hanoa,
Hanoa.
that's the land that
So saying that she has rights.
she has the original Pala from the kingdom for the water rights there. And so, what I'm trying to say to you is that we need to bring into play not only the process that they're using that denies you the full exercise of your due process,
Point.
okay,
Well put.
and because you are a beneficiary of the Cedar Lands Trust, unique from the general public, because you are the one fifth that is has already been declared by the state or the courts to be a, which is why Hawaiians and Oa gets 20% per rata share of the Cedar Lands Trust
Okay.
because they are a distinguished different section.
That's two.
Okay, um, uh, those are really the two most crucial ones because the what you're saying is the process is flawed and abrogates your right for due process. Okay,
And the first
by
one.
by not giving you the opportunity to examine the record
To
and see the
yeah,
submittals and who testified to what, so you can make a proper, lawful. And I didn't quite catch it for a long time. That most cases are not won on the the substance of the case.
Right,
It's one
merits.
on process.
Right.
Okay.
Whatever is
That's
your
right.
Right.
That's the whole
take
point. If
on
it's
it,
not on the
Yeah.
record, how can you possibly vet
then
it?
it's
Right.
not, then it doesn't show that.
Well,
Where do
and
we
so
where do
here
we
is
get
some
that?
things. Terry had talked about this before, and she brought it up when you were starting to describe who the hell says that you couldn't just describe my
Right.
religion. And what you said is very factual, having to do with the underwater car system. That when the river did flow, there were all these holy and stuff going up the stream,
Mhm.
including the
Yeah.
the Onu went
Exactly.
up there, even though it was only one day.
Exactly.
They were already going to do their thing. There are underwater cabins that lead up there, and in fact, um,
Connie did one too. They the whole time.
and again,
And then
this
she
is
was
why
like,
we need to get over ourselves and start looking at the big picture, and we need to ally. You know,
I
I mean,
know.
even if
Jim said that
the
we
way I
should
look at
call
it, look,
Connie.
if we got a beef, let's get the fucking beef over with.
Right.
Because I don't care who's who, I don't care who you think you are, I'll take anybody. If that's what it takes to get over this fucking hump about you're this guy and you did this and this and this, I can give you the history of every fucking guy who's played in this game for 30 years.
Then you put it on the fucking table and beef. We this is what Jim said. No, okay, before I lose my thought.
Yes,
Okay,
well,
Right.
that is
The
a
process.
process,
the
a
process.
process
That's the
thing.
process. And
But
we have
what you had
other
talked
points.
about, now, there are, and I brought this to their attention, there are federal dollars out there, big federal dollars, that are out there for things like stream restoration, um, watershed restoration, you know. These are all, there are big fucking monies. These are things that have been done by the Environmental Protection Agency years ago.
See, and this is the thing that Kyle was asking the Hawaiian
Yes.
people and that ahupua'a. that have been there for years, ceded lands do not have water.
And this is why, um, this is why we need to, anything to do with Hawaiian land, water, you must take the whole thing at once. And this is what I try to get.
Then, we're
Well,
tying it in, but
and and
he's not going to
and
listen to it.
and this is why it's so very important because Sam Gong cannot stand up on religious rights
He can't, and that's
because
what
he
I'm
has absolutely
challenging.
no change. Nobody has. I have. That's been my ace in the hole
Well,
that
no,
nobody knows
this
but.
is what we're up against now because of what we've been pitching. The fact that they have no qualification there. Bill Ayala went to go and they're putting together a bill, this legislation to define what that is,
And
religious
this is
rights.
and this is very very my heart at wounded knee. You'll see after they got them on the reservation, got them to put down their arms, and then they started cutting off their food and their blankets. Not to mention the introduction of fucking disease, right?
Smallpox.
I mean, these people are getting to a point where they're starving. They're saying, look, we can't depend on the United States. This is ridiculous. We're hunters. We're gatherers. Let's go out and get our own.
Right.
And they would shoot them as they left the fucking plantation,
Exactly.
reservation. And in this movie, it talks about how, in the ending part, the people got together and said, we have only one space left to do. The States realized that these people have another power that is unlike them. They just went out there and fought them.
Make a stand. We're even wanted to.
Yeah, and that's where Hawaiians, in our own funny kind of way, we've been able to cross so many boundaries because we have intermixed breed-wise. They're well, okay. Getting back to the
Getting back to Sam Gone
okay. You
and the
see,
fact that they're doing a legislative bill. I called Bill Ayala's office to relay to ask if we could get a copy. That's what Jim suggested we do. Get a copy of the draft that they're putting together. And that we need to demand, that we need to demand, now you can maybe direct us, that we need to be part.
and it's a very important position that we need to really come to understand. If you even have the smallest inclination,
Right.
Well,
the
what gives
government
them the
does
right
not.
to put through a criteria without us?
It doesn't matter. That's what I'm trying to say. You don't matter. And the only way you can matter is to make a large enough impact on the financial culpability. Thing is tied into Macanao. Hialeah is only one part of it. It has to do with the water grab. Now, where you can really understand this is in the ruling chiefs of Kau, because Kau has been traditionally controlled by water.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's why only certain families, and they're only from the Kamehameha dynasty, which if I don't know if you're old enough to remember, you couldn't go down to Kau and see Kamehameha was the killing of Keoa, who is Kamehameha's cousin, who they fought. But the choice was made to him that either he come to Puukohola or they were going to
Feed
slaughter
dinner.
all of Kau.
Feed dinner.
And so,
Shit. Yeah.
for me, when I became a Nakua from Puukohola, I am a Iapu, along with Uncle Kanak. This, I had a very hard time because I come from both sides.
So am
I
I.
come from the Kamehameha side and the Keoa side. Whether they recognize it or not, making the record, putting it on a record is so very important. You know, like me, I'm about ready to make a move that I've been putting together for 40 years. Okay? And I'm one of these guys who tell you, I'm going to punch you in the fucking mouth. And you'll watch me and you'll watch me and you'll be worried about the first couple of years. And you'll check my background like both of them did. They went and checked my background. He's the one who even told me he even got the paper of secrecy that I signed with Charlie Ken. He brought that to my attention. That's how much these guys went and dug it up, you know. But anyway, but I mean, it sounds funny, but it's
No,
very,
I know what you're talking
yeah.
about because well,
They brought it up to the big. But their Alohi's teachers, the Alohi of the Alohis, is all Charles Kemp.
yeah, even
I was personally
Walker,
trained by Charles
Walker,
Kemp.
Convino
Yeah,
One,
all that,
Mitch
the
Eli,
five.
all from Charles Kent.
Yeah, and so when they approached the Nakor from Puukohola with the first breakout. So I said, look, I'm not here to argue with you guys or to, and we'll leave it at that. But because it was such a thing of contention, because they claim to be the only class, recommended readings that they recommend people to read is um, Ancient Mo'olelo Hawaii. Oh, and so what I did is I came in with my autographed copy. And unless somebody, and this is what one of the things I constantly say when people say it's about preservation, I go, wait a minute, wait a fucking minute. You pickle fucking mangoes, bro. Because you preserve that which is dead. That's what the whole thing is. And so my position is that no, it's about preservation, protection, perpetuation of our culture.
So
Hello?
we don't need very much to say to get the application faxed
Hello?
in today.
Yes, yes.
Hi.
And so, one of the things I thought you might want to be able to use, one of the things that might condition, make sure it hits the desk on time
Yeah,
to say that you have
yeah.
a contentious tape
But
on.
it's on their thing.
I know.
It's on their
Again, it's about getting you to accept these terms.
okay. Well,
And it's all our job.
Hello?
this is what it.
We have to,
We're gonna
Hello?
fax in what we need to fax in today,
yes. And
Hello?
so,
and
what I was
then
going to
we
say,
will go and send in the hard copy
Hello?
attachment for publication.
and one of the things that,
I'm hungry. I had two of these.
only two?
Only two.
Well, and you got seafood
I know when I see
there.
the second one, I'm going,
Only
Allah, did
two.
you eat your lunch?
Right, you
I
moron.
did that to Vanessa one night. She came
I
out there
ate two.
and
You
she had
This is
some kind of
breakfast, lunch, dinner. Well, I gotta take all my
she had some kind
vitamins.
of pie, and she bought me a piece,
I didn't
and
have
I was
anything
sitting down there,
else today.
and then I walked in her room. I
Yesterday I
says,
had
"Hey,"
three,
I
four.
said, "Hey, you can't eat that." She's like, "What?" I said, "You didn't eat your dinner. How can you have dessert?" And she was like flabbergasted. I
Please,
started to
please.
laugh. I've known
Thank
her
you.
like 40
I'm
fucking
sorry.
years, so I can pull that on her. But the look on her face was, I mean, just like a kid being scolded by their parent. It was so funny. It was hilarious.
Well, I just gotta let you know that Melvin called.
With all the money
He's
he's
doing
making,
something in
where's
Japan.
his
He's
investment?
flying back and forth to Japan.
Yeah, isn't that nice? On whose dime?
It's
I have no
it's
Certainly
idea.
not
recording.
his.
It's recording.
Oh,
It's
oh
on.
no. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay,
Please do not share that with
that's your recording.
Melvin.
I don't share people's conversations. I try not to anyway, unless I'm specifically asked for something. I don't have capacity for lying.
Okay. Continue what you said
Okay,
again.
Ike, what is he doing? I need him to be out here because he hears these things very quickly. What is that you eating, by the way? You make it so looking.
Pudding. Pudding.
Get some more.
Yes, here.
Did he?
You need a
A
spoon.
spoon.
Is that your second one that you need to have?
No.
To myself. I've done surgery on myself. Isn't that interesting? She actually left me a voicemail. It was only a butt call.
Now, did Polly explain any case regarding that water and plantation?
Um, I don't know. I don't believe so. I do know that our Peli Defense Fund is all over the law books. It
That
references his
particular
stuff. But
area.
whether or not he actually won anything, I don't know. And this is the same thing I had a problem with Connect. And Connect and I had a big falling out over this.
Okay.
But because after he won the case, he started going around to our Kapuna meetings and was getting up and telling everybody, you need to sue the state. Ask me. I'll tell you how. And I had to sit down when I said, Connect. Bob, you were the name on the paper. You're not the one who fought it. So when you start telling everybody, come ask me and follow me, that's, you're fucking misleading people. And of course it pissed them off because, it was a very big case.
Well, who was the brain behind that
Alan
case?
Murakami. He was behind Peli Defense Fund and Wakeli Opun, the same one that was behind Kokolea.
Great. So, can you repeat that on?
Oh, okay. I think I got it. Okay, so um, uh, this is a point. This is why I'm really happy this religious thing is coming up because we need to acknowledge that there are many ways of our religion. There was no one book.
Exactly.
Right.
And it was so important to remember that because what they're trying to do is confine you to a book that they can reference and say, no, according to this and this and this is what's going on. This is why. This is their whole structure is to narrow down your rights. And this is why one of the key features and what we need to talk about is Huna. Okay? Of the secrets. And the reason I say that is because one of the things that, if you notice, one thing I don't have is paperwork. I give an oral testimony. I'm just waiting. I'm waiting for them to say, submitted it that way because we are from an oral culture. And because some of these things we're talking about are of a religious nature, you are not initiated. So I am not allowed to transmit that information to you. That is a key spot that is going to be our savior in this whole fucking thing is that because we're an oral culture and because the priesthood had a just like just like in Lua, you couldn't just walk in the and as a matter of fact, if you read Henry Kikahuna, which is part of the recommended readings for everybody, is that when you went into the Lua thing, there was two guards standing outside that fought you on the outside. Then you had to go through the shrimp cords. Are you familiar with the shrimp cords? And come out through the other end, where there's two other guards to kill before you can walk into that room. Henry Kikahuna stuff in the archives. It'll blow your mind. That was the first thing that Charles Ken told me to do. Goes, because I said, Kapuna, can I give you a ride out to the main highway? And I'm glad that you're inviting who you're inviting. And one of the things that I want to bring into this whole fold is that there's many degrees and many different types of corona.
Of course.
And um, I cannot say that I'm a traditional kahuna in the sense of white man etchings. And I can also tell you that there's the secrecy and the need to be initiated before certain energies were transmitted. And so, if there were a breakdown in Western terms as to what a kahuna was and how they're identified, if I was to be identified anything in that realm, it would probably be a kahuna kaula or a seer, because that's what my eyes were trained. That's what I was trained to do. And Sam Lona told me once I was given all the structure, and I was told where I could rise to within the realms of the him. I says, quite frankly, I'm not qualified. What? Anybody can plant fucking terror. You need to walk outside and walk because you can see. Nobody, not there's very few people who can see. These are first-hand accounting. One of the things I do is first-hand accounts. I don't go by somebody else's opinion. I go and get first-hand accounting. That's why when I talk about Henry Noah or Bumpy, all these things, I can tell you from first-hand accounting because I was there when it was done. I was there to participate in these things.
That original flow.
Well,
Which
because
destroyed the Opaiula, which we can use.
I bought this to show up with Alan Murakami. In fact, when we did a vigil at Waikoloa, it blew them right out of the fucking water. We did a vigil for the Opaiula.
Can we ask Alan to help us on this?
We can. I don't know if he's still a frontliner. I don't know if he's still working on this. I can tell you though that he's adjudicated many cases, and this is where some of the leverage we can use for OHA, and I'm going to use the same one, and that's why I'm sharing this with you, is that OHA has enjoyed the spoils already of the efforts done by Connect Napeahi. Connect didn't get any money for this. OHA got the money because they were
Oh, I got the money
because they were the recipient of
the case.
the no, they were the 1/5 recipient
Right.
of
Oh,
the
I
State of the
see.
Lands Trust.
I see.
And so what Connect did, and which
They,
which bothered me plenty, is that he was bringing all these guys down to Waikoloa and whining and dining them and fucking steak and lobster dinners. Didn't tell me.
that.
Hey, dig this, and my wife can verify this. I get called probably 6:30 in the fucking morning by somebody who's not even Hawaiian, who tells me, he says, "Do you know what's going on with Connect right now at Waikoloa?" I go, "No." He says, Kanak is threatening to jump off the third fucking story of the building. So they have mounted up this. Calvin, Kaleva, all of them are all in the room enjoying all this stuff. Calvin's her cousin, right? So they're all in there whining and dining with Kanak and smoking up and doing all this whole fucking nut stuff. And, but because he had said that he's going to jump off the third fucking floor of the building, it caused a big fucking thing. They had mounted up all the security there. They had the fucking SWAT team there and everything. And so when I get this message, I call down there. Now I'm living in a volcano. And I tell them, if you guys can just hold off, I will come down there and I will relieve the situation. It took me 3 hours to get there. They stood at bay for 3 fucking hours for me to arrive. And when I arrived, fucking Connect, classic Connect. He was just being. So, of course, I get into the. I'm in my mouth. Right? I come down there. I jump out of the car and everybody's like, who the fuck is this? What the fuck is this? And then Moses, who hangs around with Abel, he was there along with them. And he's like, oh, Uncle Hank, oh, Kuna's here. And just this whole 9 yards, right? Over situation. But Connect, he's getting he's being carted into the fucking ambulance. So I go in there and I go, are you doing okay? He goes, how's that for an next fucking Connect? You motherfucker, left everybody in the fucking room. Okay? So he left everybody holding the fucking bag.
So he never have to pay for the freaking room.
No, what he did
Excuse
better
me,
than
that's
that.
on
He
recording.
took all those bills. He put it all on his wife's credit card, right? Took all those bills and gave them to Owen and said, fuck you, take them. You enjoy the spoils. This is what I'm bringing up. You enjoy the spoils of my efforts. And I got nothing for this because he never claimed anything. But Oha, because he sued as Connect Napeahi, and the state looked at it and says, well, Oha is the representative of the Hawaiian people according to the state law. Again, it's all about the state. And they gave whatever monies, the 1/5 pro rata share of the ceded lands, the dolphin pond at Waikoloa is the Opaiola pond.
Yeah.
That is the ponds that were covered. What me and Connect did, right after they won, I says, and do a vigil. And they went, what are you talking about? I said, we need to make an apology to the Opaiola for allowing their house to be taken over and bulldozed
Was it?
and now converted to and they're like, what are you fucking people nuts? So, first thing they do is contact their own security, and then the closest security they could get was Kaniela Kaka on a Lundy. So they called Kaniela Kaka. He goes, who? Kanak and Hank. Oh yeah, these guys are real. These are for real guys. And they're like, well, what the fuck? And so they called their security of the whole fucking Waikoloa properties, who happens to be my brother-in-law, Gordon Roke. And he goes, who? Who did you say was coming? Hank Fergustom? Then he's coming. He goes, he's coming. I know him. He's my brother-in-law. And when Hank says he's going to do something, it doesn't matter what you have in front of him. He's going to do exactly what he says he's going to do, exactly the way he does it.
Well, till Saturday.
No, we don't have to turn it in till then.
Saturday.
Because after
Because
what
they're
I
gonna
can
get
do,
faxed.
I can
Well,
take it
10
home
days,
and
even
take it home and
calendar-wise,
fax it at any
10 days
day.
calendar-wise is Wednesday.
And they're not going to be there Saturday anyway, so it'll be there
That's
when they
what I'm
get there.
saying. That's why they can't count the weekend because
Just
they
get it
will.
in by at least by Monday.
Yeah,
Just
because
fax it,
yeah,
and then we can send.
I
because if
think
we meet with
I
Kyle,
think that
then
you're smart if you faxed at least the cover page.
Told me.
I don't agree
Did
with that.
you say it?
but since there was no record, who's to say you didn't?
Who's to say you didn't?
There you go.
That's why you play your. That's why you got to use these fucking tools
Right.
against them. Paula Sila Nui for those water rights. So the point is that they made their decision based on the submittals at the time.
On the documents in there, that a number,
You can say I was one of those
right?
members,
Any of us can
and I
say,
did say that
Yep.
because we need to bust this whole
We
fucking
need
and
to
we
thing.
stick
challenge
them. We
the
stick them at
leaders.
Yeah.
every point.
Yes.
But you got to start with the.
I'll email it to you tonight so that you can also listen to it. Um, we can try to look at how we want to move forward, like